All right, everyone, welcome to Kail Kol Shira in partnership, of course, with Breslov.org and, of course, Yeshiva Atera Shimon. Three wonderful organizations that I have the opportunity to work with, and it's such a big honor. Baruch Hashem. Okay, it's this week is Parshat Bo. It's such an exciting parsha. It's the parsha where we are actually going out of Egypt. And there's just so much to talk about. It's truly wonderful. So let's talk about the parsha in general, and then we'll bring some medrash, some Yalkut Shimoni, and some beautiful ideas, maybe even from Rabbi Nachman, of course, my favorite. And let's go into the parsha. So here we go. Why is the parsha called Parshat Bo? It's an interesting lashon. Why Bo? It should have been Lech, go. What does it mean? Come. Bo means come, like you say in Hebrew. Boinai, come over here, come to me. Why is it saying Bo el Parai, come to Parai, and not Lech el Parai? So there's many things that are written on this. One I'd like to share that's very special. We say in the Yoshe B'Seis Elyon, every day we say Yoshe B'Seis Elyon, and we end off that beautiful chapter in Tehillim that we say Imoy Anechi B'Tzora Achatzei V'Achadeyu Oidech Yomim Azbeyeyu V'Areyu B'Shuasi Oidech Yomim Azbeyeyu. We say Imoy Anechi B'Tzora. Imoy Anechi B'Tzora. Listen to this. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is with us in our tzar, in our pain. When we have pain, it pains HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He is with us in our pain. Which means HaKadosh Baruch Hu was in the palace of Parai. He was in the palace of Parai because that's where all the decrees were coming out against the Jewish people. HaKadosh Baruch Hu was there. Of course, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is everywhere. Of course, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is everywhere. Anywhere you can go, as HaKadosh Baruch Hu is always there. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu is telling to Moshe Rabbeinu, come into the palace, come to Parai. The Zohar says, and the Medrash explains, it's the Zohar and the Medrash, that Moshe was afraid to enter the innermost chambers of Parai because he sensed the deep tumah that was there, the impurity of Parai's wife. We know that she was a sorcerer. She was a witch, mamash a witch. And because of these evil forces that were there, they were protecting Parai. But we said Hashem was with him. So therefore it says, come to me. Implying that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is walking with Moshe Rabbeinu. Of course, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is with Moshe Rabbeinu. The Yalkut Shimoni addresses the classic question: if God hardened Parai's heart, he hardened Parai's heart, so where was his free will? Where was Parai's free will? So the first 5 plagues, Parai hardened his own heart. See, the first 5 plagues weren't so difficult. They weren't as difficult plagues as the second 5. So the first 5, Parai hardened his own heart, and he figured he can get through them. But the last 5 plagues, HaKadosh Baruch Hu closed the door to tshuva for Parai. because Paro had become so monstrous that he lost the privilege of regret. He was kept alive solely to serve as a canvas for Hashem's wonders. It's amazing. Let's talk about the locust. It was nature's total war. It was a total war. HaKadosh Baruch Hu brought a locust that mamish disseminated, that got rid of everything and any trace of anything in Mitzrayim. These locusts, not only did they eat the trees and everything that was left on the trees, but they ate the trees themselves. They ate wood. They ate the roofs of their homes. They destroyed the entire place. Moshe warns Paro that these locusts will come and cover the eye of the earth. You won't see anything. There'll only be locusts. And the Medrash interprets this that it was mamish literal. It was literal. The swarm of the locusts was so thick, that the sun's rays could not hit the ground. It was dark, even though it was during the day. See, normally the sun hits the ground and it reflects off the ground. But the locust was covering every square inch. There was nothing. So they just absorbed the sun's rays in the locust, and it didn't bounce off, and it was pitch dark. And the damage from the locust, of course they ate the green leaves, but these were super locusts. They ate, like I said, the wood of the houses. They ate even metal tools. They ate anything. And even stones and mortar. Why? Why did Hashem do that? Because look what Paro did to Klal Yisrael. Look what Paro did to Klal Yisrael. We have to make our own bricks. Oh yeah? Here, watch. I'm going to send a locust that's going to destroy all of your bricks. It's so beautiful how HaKadosh Baruch Hu played with Paro. It's so beautiful to see this. But what was the reaction from the people? From the Egyptian people, the Mitzrayim? What was their reaction? Paro's servants. They say, let the men go. Do you not yet know that the Mitzrayim is destroyed? Paro, go take a look outside. Look what just happened. The Medrash says that not only that, but the treasury was empty. And the granaries were bare. They ate everything. So what happened? Listen to this. This is so beautiful. HaKadosh Baruch Hu's his divine humor. Look at the humor of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. After the Makkah was over from the locust and they left, the Egyptians celebrated. There was a big simcha by the Mitzrayim. What? Their homes were destroyed, and their fields and their bricks and their tools, but they were still joyous. Why? Because they had caught and salted millions of them to eat as a free food source. So the Mitzrayim thought like this, you know what, we'll have protein. We don't have vegetables. We're not going to have fruits. We'll have protein. We'll have locusts. So they caught these locusts, millions of them, and they salted them, and they jarred them. Hashem brought a mighty west wind, The Ruach of the west is the strong wind that took even the salted ones out of the jars and threw them into the Red Sea. It's amazing. They thought, they went crazy. They lost everything. Oh, but we have some locust. We have some locust. And they were so happy about that. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, you're going to be happy about that? Look at this. Now the next makkah was Chayshach. At Arba and Chayshach, right? So what happened to the makkahs of Chayshach? The Medrash says that this was not an absence of light. This wasn't that there was just no light and therefore it was dark. But the darkness was primordial. It was a chaos. This was the Chayshach of Bereshis. When it says that the world was Chayshach al Pnei Sahaim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu brought back that same Choshech, that same darkness. He brought back the same darkness. It was a substance, something that they were able to actually feel. It wasn't just dark. But the Makkah was divided into two stages. There was the first 3 days, and then it was day 1 to 3, and then 4 to 6. So 1 to 3, the ordinary darkness, if the Egyptians wanted to walk, they could. They were able to walk around, sit, stand, whatever. It was just dark. It was very dark, a thick darkness. But days 4 to 6, the darkness was a darkness that confined them. They couldn't move. The air thickened into almost like a gel. If someone was sitting, they were frozen in a seated position. If they were standing, they were frozen standing. They became like icicles. They froze. When was the 7th day? What was the 7th day of the darkness? Well, most of the sources say that the 6 days, the Medrash notes that the hidden 7th day of darkness occurred during Kriyas Yamsuf. It was so dark for the Mitzrayim also, that was the 7th day of the darkness. But what happened? And this is such a sad thing. The Medrash states, it says that we're going to read next week, V'chamushim olu mi Mitzrayim, V'chamushim olu. So Rashi says, Tu pshatim, what is V'chamushim? Means that they were armed. They were armed. But there's another pshat. And what's that? V'chamushim olu mi Mitzrayim, that only 1/5, which is 20%. Only 1/5 of the Yidden actually went out of Mitzrayim. So what happened to the 4/5? They died during Makkos Chayshach. Why? Why did they die? These were the Jews that didn't want to leave Mitzrayim. As sad as it was and as terrible as it was for them, people don't want change. It's hard to change. Why does HaKadosh Baruch Hu love about tshuva more than anything? And it says, "B'makim balei tshuva oimdim ein sadikim gemurim yacholim la'amoid." Why is that? Because for someone to change, it's great. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu knows that. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu knows how difficult it is for anyone to change. And because he knows how difficult it is for anyone to change, HaKadosh Baruch Hu loves anyone that changes. But these Jews, no matter how difficult it was, they got used to it. They got used to it. And they didn't want to go out of Mitzrayim. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, no. I'm making these 10 plagues to show that I run this world and all the Jewish people are going to go out. What kind of miracle would be if only 20% went out and 80% stayed in Mitzrayim? How would that have looked? So therefore, 80% passed away. Only 20% were actually able to go out. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu buried them during the Makkah of Choshech, the Makkah of darkness. Why? So that way the Egyptians wouldn't say, oh, we're getting hit with the Makkah, so are the Jews. The Jews are also getting hit with the Makkah. And because the Jews are getting hit with the Makkah, so it's not so bad. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu made them pass away during the Makkah while the Egyptians were in that gel state and they couldn't move, they couldn't see. And Hashem buried them so they wouldn't be around. Unbelievable to understand that. It's something so special to understand how careful HaKadosh Baruch Hu is with everyone, with everything in life. Now let's talk about the last Makkah. The last Makkah was the Makkah of Korban Pesach. The last Makkah was the Makkah of Korban Pesach. And it was so special. So the question's asked, why did the Jewish people, why did Hashem have us take a lamb on the 10th of Nisan and wait until the 14th day to slaughter it? The Medrash says that the Jews had fallen to the 49th level of impurity. Right? We know we fell to the 49th level of impurity. Wow. To the Memtesh Shari Tumah. We fell to the Memtesh Shari Tumah. And had no mitzvahs to their names. So God gave them 2 mitzvahs to earn their redemption. And what was that? The mitzvah of circumcision, that they would have to circumcise themselves, and the blood of the bris, and the blood of the Korban Pesach. Those would be their thing. And that's why when we're at a bris milah today, we make mention of the 2 dam. We say, v'damaya chayi, v'damaya chayi. What's the damaya chayi? One is making a reference to the bris milah, of course, and the other one's making a reference to the Korban Pesach, the blood of the Korban Pesach. And why 4 days? They needed 4 days to check the lamb and detach themselves from the Egyptian idolatry that it represented. Again, remember, the Egyptians worshipped the lamb. They worshipped the lamb. It was one of their gods. But we fell to that as well. We did not change our names. We were not involved, chas v'shalom, in immorality, but avodah zarah we were involved in. So we needed 4 days in order to take us, to disconnect us from that, in order to be able to bring it as a carbon to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Let's talk about the bravery of the Yidden, how brave they were. When the Mitzrayim saw the Jews, they saw a Yid tying up the lamb to their bed. They asked, "What are you doing?" And the Yid replied, "We are going to slaughter this lamb, your God, in 4 days. The Medrash says that the Egyptians' teeth were set on edge, but they were miraculously paralyzed and they could not attack. They wanted to attack us, but HaKadosh Baruch Hu held them back. And it was through our Mesiras Nefesh. That's so important that we had Mesiras Nefesh. And that's really was the schus that they gave us to be able to be successful and to get out of Mitzrayim was our Mesiras Nefesh. Unreal, unbelievable. Now, let me tell you something else. The smell when they were roasting the Korban Pesach, it was the smell of Gan Eden. The Medrash says that when the Jews were roasting the Korban Pesach, HaKadosh Baruch Hu sent a wind from Gan Eden to mix with the smoke of the Korban Pesach. Oh, how beautiful. How beautiful. The scent was so heavenly that every Egyptian felt a deep physical longing for holiness that they were about to lose. Unbelievable.
Wow.
These Mitzrayim, wow. Now let's talk about, so that's what happened, and now we know, B'chatzi Alayla, right? B'chatzi Alayla, HaKadosh Baruch Hu went out, and he smote every single one of the firstborns. And the Medrash says, there was not a house that there wasn't a cry in. In every Egyptian home, the firstborn died. If there were no firstborns, the leader of the house died. If the firstborn had already died years ago, and they made an idol from them, they crumbled. Anything to do with the firstborn was gone. And here's something so beautiful. Let's talk about the dogs of Mitzrayim now. The dogs. During the plague, the Torah says, not a dog opened its mouth, not a dog barked. The Medrash rewards the dogs for this, and we are commanded to throw the treif meat to the dogs as almost their salary. We're giving them something because of their silence, that they silenced themselves during the Yetzias Mitzrayim. So the Torah says, if you have treif meat, hashlech lakalov, and send it over to the dogs. Send it to the dogs. Unreal. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, anything that anyone does that does something for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, even a dog, HaKadosh Baruch Hu pays them back. It's so beautiful. Okay. Paro's, he had a big humiliation. Let's talk about Paro's humiliation. Paro was the firstborn himself. He ran from house to house in the middle of the night asking, where does Moshe live? In which house can I find Moshe? The Jewish people teased him, pointing him in the wrong direction until he found Moshe anyway. You were troubling us for all these years. Now you want us to help you? And that's the famous thing that Paro was running around in the middle of the night in his pajamas. Why was he running around? Because he was afraid he was about to be smitten also. Now I forgot, but let's mention one thing, that during the Makkah of Choshech, the Jews went around into the homes of the Egyptians and they were snooping around. And they were looking where all the gold and the silver was hidden. And all the kalim, all the gold and silver kalim, where did they hide everything? So they would know. But we didn't take anything. We didn't take anything at all. We waited until now. And the Mitzrayim didn't just give gold to the Jews, they forced it upon them. They said, please take it, this, and leave before we all die. So we didn't take it from them, they made us take it. They said, take this and go. We don't want to die. Moshe Rabbeinu, while everyone was worrying about the gold and looking around, what was Moshe Rabbeinu busy doing? Moshe Rabbeinu spent the 3 days looking for the Atzmais Yosef, the bones of Yosef. Serach Bas Osher, she was the granddaughter of Yaakov, showed Moshe that the Egyptians had put Yosef in a metal-lead coffin and sunk it in the Nile to bless the water. She showed him. She was around. She was still around. She was a very old lady, but she was still around. And Moshe threw a stone with Hashem's name into the water. And he said, Yosef, the time for HaKadosh Baruch Hu's promise to redeem the Jewish people has come. It's now. And the Aron of Yosef rose up from the water to the surface like a piece of wood. But this was lead. And lead doesn't usually rise. But since Moshe Rabbeinu used the shame of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, plus he told Yosef HaTzadik, it's time to go. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is taking us out now. So of course, he came up. It's unbelievable that Moshe Rabbeinu wasn't worried about money. He was worried about the atzmas of Yosef, the bones of Yosef HaTzadik. The number of the people now. So we said that there was only 1/5 left. There was only 1/5 left. And there was 600,000 men. 600,000 men. The Medrash says that there were also 600,000 children and an equal number of women. Plus, of course, the Erev Rav. Oy, who were these Erev Rav? Oy, the Erev Rav, the Erev Rav. Who are the Erev Rav? And what was the story with the Erev Rav? What was the story with the Erev Rav? Let's talk about that for a moment. Let's talk about who was the Erev Rav and what happened with the Erev Rav and where did they come about and what was the story with them. So listen to this. You know, there are those that like to always be on the winning team, right? There are those that love to be on the winning team and they don't ever want to lose. They want to always win. They don't want to be on the losing team. They want to win. So the Erev Rav said, we want to come out with you. But their intentions weren't good intentions. They were sorcerers themselves. They weren't good people at all. They weren't good people. But Moshe Rabbeinu said, wait a second. If I can take these people out and I can transform these people, what a great Kiddush Hashem that'll be. If I can take these people and make them great, how great that'll bring to bring them closer to Hashem. How great of a miracle that would be. Moshe Rabbeinu asked HaKadosh Baruch Hu, should I take out the Erev Rav? And HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, I don't think it's a good idea. But if you want to take them, you have the right to take them. And Moshe Rabbeinu, again, because of his love to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu and to bring a kavod shemayim to the world, Moshe Rabbeinu took out the Erev Rav. And we know it was the Erev Rav that were the ones that instigated the sin of the Egel Azov, of the golden calf. It was the Erev Rav that instigated. They were the instigators. But they came out with us. It's something special to understand, something really to fathom this idea, how the Erev Rav came out and how they were able to instigate us. Okay, we also had the idea of the new moon, and it's a quote. I'm going to quote you from the Yalkut Shimoni, that this month shall be for you. Hashem showed Moshe the moon, and until now, I manage the calendar. From now on, the power to determine the month and year is in the hands of the Jewish court, the Bezdin. And we know that. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I'm giving it over to you, the Rosh Chodesh. And then what happened to the matzah? So it says that we had the sack of dough on our backs, and it baked on their backs the heat of the sun and the Anani HaKavod baked the dough instantly. Even though it was bread of affliction, mamash, it was a bread of affliction. It tasted like mun. Of course, it was the Anani HaKavod that baked the bread. Of course, it's going to taste like the mun. And when it came to the redemption, it was in the merit of the righteous women of the generation. Klal Yisrael was redeemed. They kept the hope of the future alive when the men had given up. The men had given up because of their back-breaking work. But the women, the Nashim Sitkaniyos, were how we were saved. And they kept it up. And it's something so special for us to understand. Something so special to understand. In fact, we have to know that the Nashim Tzidkaniyos are so important. The Nashim Tzidkaniyos are the most. It's amazing. And how the first mitzvah that we have in the Torah is Achodesh Hazeh Lachem Rosh Chodashim. And the famous Rashi asks, the first Rashi in the Chumash asks, why does the Torah start off with Bereshis Bara Elikim and the whole story of Bereshis? Why? Kayach Masav Higid Liyamai, not Losais Lahem Nachlas Goyim. HaKadosh Baruch Hu shows that I made the world. I gave Eretz Yisrael and all the lands to whom I chose to give it to. They didn't do what they were supposed to do. I gave them the mitzvahs. They didn't follow them. I took it away and I gave the land to Eretz Klal Yisrael. And Rashi says over there, really, the Torah should have started with Achodesh Hazeh Lachem Rosh Chodashim, because that's the first mitzvah. Okay. I mean, this is really the whole, the parsha. Okay. I really, I'm very grateful to all our listeners, and I wish everyone a wonderful Shabbos, and it should be a Shabbos that we should mamish feel. Let us feel the Geula. Let us feel that we're going out of Mitzrayim. These are the weeks. This is the weeks we're getting ready. We could all these beautiful things we're learning are perfect for the Seder night. These are all treasures. We got to tell over you that the miracles, these are the miracles. We're reading them right now. And the midst of Hashem, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to bring us the big, big, big miracle, the big, big Yeshua, with the coming of Mashiach Tzidkeinu, B'kara, V'yameinu, Mamish. Everyone have a good Shabbos, Kol Tuv.